What we see right now is a market where geopolitics, centralization risk, and a single company's giant crypto treasury collide, and that collision makes a story that sounds like a techno-thriller. Imagine, purely hypothetically, a US-EU spat over Greenland and rare earths turns into trade sanctions and the EU invokes its anti-coercion instrument, ACI. Suddenly, traditional banking rails get choked, and institutions start asking, if banks can be shut out of Europe, what financial rails cannot be shut out? What we observe from the headlines is simple. The EU's anti-coercion instrument exists to give the Union legal tools to retaliate against nations that try to use economic pressure to force political outcomes. In the current Greenland flap, the ACI has been floated publicly as one of the options on the table. Meaning, in theory, it could be used to block or restrict foreign financial firms from participating in public tenders or certain markets inside the EU. The implication of that, if invoked in its harshest form, is that big US banks could face operational barriers in Europe. That would be a financial rails shock. Now pause. This is not the new status quo today. It is a high-impact scenario being discussed in the press. If policymakers actually deploy the ACI in extreme ways, multinational companies and banks would face real frictions moving capital across New York, Frankfurt lanes. That's the seed of the story I'm about to lay out. What we see in theory is that when traditional pipes clog, people start looking for pipes that are harder to turn off. Banks are national and political. Blockchains, by design, are global, permissionless, and politically diffuse. If the financial equivalent of a cross-border roadblock appears, institutional treasurers and multinationals may look for settlement layers that don't require a three-party bank transfer through a clearinghouse that can be legally barred. That doesn't mean every CFO will park payroll on Ethereum overnight. No way. But for cross-border settlement, tokenized assets, and corporate liquidity management, especially in crisis scenarios, a settlement rail that's difficult to sanction could attract attention quickly. I'm not saying blockchain replaces banks. I'm saying in shock scenarios, blockchain becomes interesting as a resilient alternative. What I have observed about Bitmine, Bmnr, is concrete and pretty headline-worthy. They control a massive ETH treasury and a growing staking footprint. As of January 19, 2026, Bitmine reported 4,203,036 ETH, valued in their release at $3,211 per ETH, 193 BTC, about $979 million in cash, and $22 million in moonshots, totaling roughly $14.5 billion in crypto plus cash plus moonshots on the balance sheet. They also reported 1,838,003 ETH staked, $5.9B at $3,211 per ETH. Those are rock-solid numbers coming from company filings and releases. In plain English, Bitmine is not a small miner with a few rigs. They have organized a giant, visible pile of Ethereum, enough to be noticed by on-chain watchers and institutional scanners. When people talk about the company that owns a meaningful share of ETH, they mean Bitmine. By the way, if you are getting value from this video so far and want more like this, please like the video, it means much to us, and hit the subscribe button, and comment the word more. Just go ahead and type the word more so I know. Now that you have commented, let's continue. Here's the three-line thesis I keep rerunning in my head. 1. A geopolitical shock, ACI invoked, impairs normal bank rails for a slice of global capital flows. 2. Institutions need an unblockable settlement alternative. 3. They can either buy ETH directly, operationally messy for pensions, insurers, and funds, or buy a publicly traded, regulated vehicle that already holds and secures a massive ETH treasury. Enter Bitmine. If institutions prefer the latter, a regulated, US-listed vehicle with an audited ETH treasury, Bitmine becomes a ready-made on-ramp, a company that is legally visible, has custody/infrastructure, and a public ticker, making it easier for desks to buy exposure without direct custody friction. That's how Bitmine could play a new bank role, not replacing clearing banks but acting as a politically neutral liquidity hub for institutional ETH exposure. This is the new JP Morgan part, not because Bitmine has a derivatives desk, but because it could become a trusted institutional gateway to a new kind of money. Numbers matter here. Bitmine's 4.2M ETH equals roughly 3.4 to 3.5% of circulating ETH, estimates around 120.7 M total supply, depending on the snapshot. Owning 3 to 4% of a global monetary supply is not trivial. To make the analogy vivid, It's like a company owning 3.5% of all the gold ever mined, or a bank holding a multi-percent share of the global reserves in a new settlement asset. That kind of scale gives them influence over liquidity and narrative. Again, influence, not governance, because Ethereum's protocol governance is decentralized. But from a liquidity standpoint, that's big. Important caveat: owning 3 to 4% of supply doesn't let you print or unilaterally move markets forever. Markets are dynamic and price in both concentration risks and counterparty responses. But scale does allow a firm to be a visible counterparty in times of stress. That's the essence of the new bank comparison. What we observe about Bitmine's operations is that it also runs physical infrastructure in Texas, Pecos, and Silverton, and benefits from the U.S. grid and energy arrangements there. In our geopolitical scenario, if Europe faces disruption and energy costs spike, supply chain and trade disruptions can do this. European miners and data centers could face sharply higher operating costs. Some would shut down or become uneconomical. That reduces global competition for mining rewards and could lower proof-of-work difficulty, an advantage for miners still online in cheaper energy jurisdictions. Bitmine pivoted to ETH staking and treasury holdings, but its U.S. operational footprint is a durability asset in the story. Picture it like this. While other miners are trying to keep the lights on under a skyrocketing electric bill in Paris, Bitmine's Texas facilities are sipping cheap grid juice and quietly collecting yield or rewards. In a tumultuous world, operational location matters. I like stories that are staged, so here's a 3-phase timeline of how Bmnr could reprice under the geopolitical plus macro thesis. Phase 1, the shakeout. Today, headlines of trade war and ACI scare retail. Bmnr looks risky, it's volatile, crypto-correlated, so shorts and panicked retail sellers push the stock down. That's the moment of maximum pessimism that seeds a buying opportunity. Investors who can look beyond the noise might see an asset gap, crypto NAV versus market cap. Phase 2, the realization, a political escalator, e.g., ACI invoked or significant sanctions announced, cut some banks out of EU pipelines. Institutional treasury teams scramble to find alternative settlement rails. Analysts start to model tokenized settlement, and they notice publicly traded proxies that already hold assets. Bitmine's balance sheet is a visible, audited pile of ETH that institutional buyers can understand. That's the moment perception changes, from risky miner to strategic treasury that could hit it to $5,000. Phase 3, the super squeeze. Institutions decide they need exposure and either buy ETH, operational friction, or buy Bmnr as a regulated entry. When funds screen for unbannable rails, Bitmine shows up as a public company with deep ETH exposure. Large desks start buying, liquidity tightens, and the stock re-rates toward its NAV, maybe overshoots, producing a vertical move, a god candle. This is the bullish endgame of the scenario. 2 important reality checks. 1. This is a high-variance scenario, not a forecast. 2. Regulatory, tax, and custody constraints for institutions are complex, so adoption will not be frictionless. But in a tail risk shock, the demand for resilient rails could spike quickly. Note this as well. Daniel 7 verses 25 to 27 tells us, "And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws. And they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and the dividing of time. But the judgment shall sit, and they shall take away his dominion, to consume and to destroy it unto the end. And the kingdom and dominion, and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven, shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him." Want more information about the books of prophecy? Please check the description section. That's the end for now. If you have watched until the end, drop a comment like this: "I stayed until the end." Just comment that I stayed until the end. When I see this comment, I will give you a heart. 3 more favors I request from you. First, like this video, subscribe, and then turn on the notifications bell. If you do this, you greatly encourage us to continue bringing to you more insightful videos. Do not miss out on our future videos. All I am asking is your subscription. Thank you for joining me today. Your support means so much to us. Do not hesitate to share this video to help someone who may benefit. I recommend that you watch the next video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts about today's video. Wish you God's love.